Hello and welcome to another painting video. In this video I'll be painting a novitiate from the new Sisters of Battle kill team. Ever since they rebooted the Sisters of Battle line, I've had my eye on them. This kill team is the perfect way to try out some new Sisters models. Also, what's not to like about warrior nuns with guns? Let's begin, shall we? I want the novitiates to be wearing black leather suits. After a Mechanicus standard grey primer, I paint the leather with Abaddon Black. I needed about 2 coats. To add a bluish tint to the leather, I painted with Leviadon Blue. Then comes the highlighting. I use Dark Reaper first. I use a mix of edge highlighting and picking spots on the leather where the light would reflect to create a shiny leather look. The second highlight is Thunderhawk Blue. I go over all the previous highlights but make sure the previous color is still showing. With edge highlighting, I try to make them smaller and smaller. The third highlight is Fenrisian Grey. Again, I make smaller and smaller highlights to concentrate the light hitting the armor and leather. Finally, I use Blue Horror to brighten up the highlight even more. This was a new challenge because I've never painted this kind of leather before. It sure needs some refining, but I think the colors used here do build up to a convincing leather look. The robe is painted first with Xandri Dust. Then I shade the robe with a watered down Guilliman Flesh. I layer back Xandri Dust on the raised areas. And finally I highlight the robe with Karak Stone. I am sticking to the color scheme that GW uses. I tried to come up with other schemes using Photoshop, but nothing really worked except using these tan ropes. The Nun Veil, yes, that's what it's called, I paint with Celestra Grey. I layer on Ulthuan Grey on most of the veil, leaving some Celestra Grey showing where a shadow would be. Finally, I paint White Scar on most of the veil. I painted it twice to get a nice even coat. As you can see here, I also painted some armor details with the same technique. I usually don't use bright white on models, but it does contrast nicely with the dark armor. The leather belt and pouches I paint with Agrax Brown. I shade it with Agrax Earthshade. And shade it again with Nuln Oil. I highlight Agrax Brown back on the belt. And end with a highlight of Deathclaw Brown. This color leather really works well with the tan robe. Let's paint the weapons next. Everything metal, I paint with Iron Warriors. Then shade with Nuln Oil. And highlight with Runefang Steel. Iron Warriors is already a darker metal than the standard Leadbelcher, and personally that works really well for me. Not using Agrax Earthshade makes the metal look a bit cleaner as well. I also painted the parts I want gold, as usually gold paint doesn't cover very well. The gold parts I paint with Retributor Armour. Then shade with Reikland Fleshshade. I highlight with Shining Gold. This is an older paint, which I think has been replaced in the Citadel range by Gehenna's Gold. The Nuln is obviously not showing a lot of skin, but the face I paint with Cadian Fleshtone. Then shade it with Guilliman Flesh. And I highlight it with Kislev Flesh. The Mace Handle I paint with Screamer Pink. I shade it with Carroburg Crimson and highlight with Pink Horror. On to the base. I was going for a reddish tint, but a lot more subdued. First I paint the ground with Agrellan Earth. Then I shade it with Seraphim Sepia. Now to add two dry brushes. First I use Jokaero Orange. I make sure to hit the boots and the robe as well. The second dry brush is Fire Dragon Bright. The little wall I paint with Dawnstone. Shade with Basilicanum Grey. And highlight with Celestra Grey. To finish the base, I use a pigment called Yellow Ochre from Green Stuff World to add more interesting colors to the base. I first add some pigment to the base. Then, with a damp brush, I smear the pigment around so it won't immediately fall off the base. And of course, I paint the rim of the base. Here I use Dryad Bark. And here we have a stoic novitiate militant, ready to purge the galaxy of heretic and foul Xenos. This is a simple paint scheme, but it works really well with this model. I'm also happy with the black leather, something I want to expand upon for a future project. In my next video, I will have a look at the Novitiate Superior, who has more elaborate robes and armor, and some other interesting things to paint. Be sure to check out my Instagram, where I post pictures of current projects and behind the scenes stuff. But for now, thanks for watching.